You know, usually when we talk about being alone in a museum at midnight, the absolute scariest thing you might imagine is like maybe a creepy centuries-old portrait.
Right, the classic trope where the eyes seem to follow you down the hall.
Exactly. Or perhaps a suddenly creaky floorboard in a room that you know for an absolute fact is entirely empty.
Oh, sure. That immediate spike of adrenaline.
But I want you, our listener, to picture this very specific scenario. It is midnight in the city of Ankh-Morpork.
Specifically inside the Royal Art Museum.
Right. The air is thick, it's dusty, and it's completely silent, and we have a brand new night watchman on duty.
A guy named Rudolph Scattering.
Yes, Rudolph. Now, Rudolph is not exactly your quintessential, rugged security guard. He has a few profound problems.
That's putting it mildly.
Right. Chief among them, he has nyctophobia. He suffers from an intense, completely paralyzing fear of the dark.
Which is, let's be honest, that is not ideal for a night watchman.
Not at all. He is terrified of strange noises. In fact, he is terrified of absolutely everything he can see, hear, smell, or feel crawling up the back of his neck during his shift.
Which, if we are being completely objective, is probably the single worst psychological profile you could possibly construct for this job.
It really is.
You're talking about a massive, drafty building filled to the brim with ancient, unsettling, and potentially cursed artifacts.
Right, and he's totally alone in there.
Exactly. And Rudolph is actively trying to comfort himself with the rationalization that everything in the building is long dead.
But honestly, rather than bringing him peace, that rationalization just makes him feel incredibly isolated.
Yeah, he feels like the only pulsing, living target in a mausoleum.
That is exactly the vibe. He is acutely aware of his own heartbeat.
Just boom, boom, boom in the quiet.
So he's doing his rounds, right? And he finds himself down in the basement.
Always a basement.
Always the basement. It's a neglected space, mostly filled with old, looming shelves and heavy wooden drawers stuffed with things that are almost completely thrown away.
But not quite deemed entirely worthless.
Right, the forgotten detritus of history. And as he's standing there, his lantern throwing these wild jumping shadows against the stone walls, he hears it. A sob.
Oh, no.
And here is the crucial distinction.
Yeah.
It is not a scream.
Right, a scream is different.
A scream, as terrifying as it is, at least gives you certainty. You know exactly what a scream means.
It means run.
Exactly. But a faint, muffled sob echoing in a pitch-black basement, that makes you wait in agonizing terror to see if you hear it a second time.
It's the anticipation that gets you.
So Rudolph raises his lantern. His hand is physically shaking. He knows the museum is locked up tight.
No one can possibly get in.
Or, as the cold realization suddenly washes over him, no one can get out.
It is the absolute quintessential lock room horror setup. The architecture of the space itself becomes a trap.
He is entombed with whatever is making that noise.
He really is.
So he holds his breath, and then he hears another sog.
Oh, man.
And right after that, a scraping sound like heavy pottery shifting against wood.
That would be it for me. I'd be done.
Rudolph, fueled by pure, unadulterated panic, calls out into the dark. And he does so with this total, heartfelt, desperate accuracy.
What does he say?
He yells, "Look, I don't want to have to come in there and get you."
Oh, that is such a beautifully pathetic attempt at authority.
Isn't it? And what happens next? The heavy wooden shelves explode.
Wow.
But they don't just shatter. The text describes it happening in this bizarre, dreamlike slow motion.
Like time is standing still.
Bits of ancient pottery, fragments of statues, and splinters of wood, they drift toward him through the air.
So cinematic.
Rudolph falls over backward in shock, and this expanding cloud of debris crashes into the shelves on the completely opposite side of the room.
Totally demolishing them in a cascade of destruction.
He is left just lying there on the cold stone floor in the pitch dark, absolutely paralyzed.
Just waiting for the inevitable moment when he is torn apart by whatever phantom just decimated the room.
But what makes this opening so brilliant is the punchline to this whole terrifying ordeal.
Right, because when the morning staff finally arrives, they don't find a grisly scene.
No, they don't.
They find Rudolph scattering deeply, peacefully asleep on the floor.
Covered from head to toe in ancient dust.
He wakes up, gives them this wildly garbled, hysterical explanation of exploding pottery.
And the management, very kindly but firmly, suggests that perhaps he should consider a rather dramatic career change.
Which is probably for the best.
He ends up taking a job at a local pet shop.
A nice, safe pet shop.
But even that doesn't work out. He only lasts 3 days because the intense way the kittens stare at him triggers terrible nightmares.
The universe is just relentlessly cruel to poor Rudolph.
It really is. But the absolute best part of this story, and the specific reason we are starting our deep dive with this completely bizarre, seemingly random anecdote, is the massive secret that Rudolph keeps entirely to himself.
He never tells the museum director or the police or anyone else.
Right. He never tells them that right before those shelves exploded into a million pieces, he saw something.
What did he see?
He saw a gloriously glittering lady, radiant in the darkness, holding a large ball suspended over her head.
Just floating there.
She looked right at him, she smiled this knowing smile, and then she vanished into thin air.
And he keeps his mouth shut about this glowing apparition simply because he doesn't want people to think he's strange.
Exactly. He just wants to be normal.
It is a phenomenal introduction to the sheer unpredictability and the layered reality of the world we are exploring today.
It sets the tone perfectly.
Rudolph is a normal man who accidentally brushes up against something ancient, powerful, and completely beyond his comprehension.
And his instinct is just to look away.
Just pretend it didn't happen to preserve his own mundane reality.
And that instinct to look away from the bizarre is going to be a massive theme for us today.
It really is.
So let's officially set the stage for you. Today, we are taking a deep dive into the intricate, hilarious, and incredibly highly stratified world of Unseen University and the wider city of Ankh-Morpork.
It's quite the world.
Our mission today is to examine the fallout of a single, long-forgotten legal clause. We are going to look at how a dusty piece of paper forces the violent collision of 3 completely isolated, entirely separate worlds.
Okay, let's lay those out.
First, you have the impossibly elite, delightfully lazy, and structurally insulated wizards of the university.
Right.
Second, you have the gritty, hyper-competent, hard-working underbelly of the working class that literally keeps the university's lights on.
The invisible workforce.
And third, you have the brutally violent, bloody street sport that is about to drag these 2 worlds together.
What's fascinating here is that on the surface, this might sound like a whimsical story about a magical university.
Sure, it sounds like a fantasy romp.
But if we actually analyze the underlying structures presented to us, this is a profound, razor-sharp sociological study of class divides, the suffocating weight of tradition, and the insidious nature of systemic prejudice.
Wow.
We are looking at an ancient, bloated institution that has essentially been running on bureaucratic autopilot for centuries.
The people at the top have entirely lost touch with consequence.
Exactly. And suddenly, through a legal technicality, that institution is forced to confront the messy, dangerous, and highly physical reality of the streets located just outside its thick stone walls.
We are really talking about the architecture of society itself.
And how vulnerable that architecture is when the foundational pillars are forced to interact.
Okay, let's unpack this idea of architecture. Because to truly understand the architecture of this society, to understand the vast chasms between the social classes, we actually need to start by looking at the literal architecture of, well, their bedrooms.
Specifically, the beds they sleep in.
Yes. We are introduced to this incredibly revealing concept called lectrology.
Lectrology.
Which is defined as the study of beds to determine the psychological and sociological personality of the person sleeping in them.
It is a brilliant framing device.
It really is.
The underlying argument of lectrology is that studying someone's bed and the immediate environment they have constructed around their resting place can tell you practically everything you need to know about the owner's expectations of the world.
So it's like a diagnostic tool.
It is essentially a diagnostic tool for mapping out the extreme, unyielding hierarchy of this particular universe.
Because a bed is where you're vulnerable.
Right. A bed is where a human being is at their most vulnerable. Therefore, the way they secure that vulnerability speaks volumes about their power and their status.
Right. So let's start by looking at the absolute apex of the food chain. We have Arch-Chancellor Mustrum Ridcolli, the head of Unseen University.
The man in charge?
His bed is described as an 8 poster.
An 8 poster.
Now, I want you to really visualize that. Not a standard 4-poster bed, which is already a symbol of wealth and status in many historical contexts.
Right. 4 isn't enough.
It's an 8-poster. This piece of furniture is so massive, it practically requires its own zip code.
It's essentially a small room.
It encompasses a small, curated library, a built-in, fully stocked bar.
Of course.
And this is the detail that absolutely gets me, an artfully shut-away privy.
A toilet.
A completely constructed, polished mahogany and gleaming brass toilet integrated right into the structure of the bed itself.
And we are specifically told why Ridcully has this built-in bathroom.
Why?
It's to completely save him from those agonizing, long, cold, nocturnal excursions across a drafty stone floor.
Oh, to just avoid the cold floor.
By integrating the privy into the bed, Ridcully never has to risk tripping over a stray slipper in the dark.
He never has to stub his toe on an empty wine bottle or a misplaced shoe.
Exactly. He never has to experience the minor terror of shuffling blindly through the dark, praying that the next thing his foot connects with will be the cold porcelain of a chamber pot rather than a sharp table leg.
His bed is engineered to completely isolate him from even the most microscopic, minor discomforts of human existence.
It is the ultimate monopolization of resources dedicated entirely to personal convenience.
It is a literal fortress of absolute, unadulterated privilege.
He has built a self-sustaining ecosystem where he never has to leave his comfort zone.
But then, we take a massive step down the social ladder. Let's travel down to the kitchens and look at Glenda.
The woman who runs the night kitchen and keeps the university fed.
She sleeps in an ancient cast-iron bed. The springs in the mattress have gently, inexorably shaped themselves around her physical form over the years,
leaving this permanent, generous depression in the center.
But what is truly revealing about Glenda's situation is what is actually holding the bed up.
Yes, the structural integrity of Glenda's bed relies on a mulch of cheap, yellowing romantic novels shoved underneath the frame.
Ah.
These are the specific kind of mass-market paperbacks where the word bodice comes up naturally and frequently.
Right. Those are really cheesy romance novels.
And the psychological implication here is vast.
How so?
Glenda presents herself as a tough, no-nonsense manager, but her foundation, literally the thing keeping her off the cold floor, is secret romantic escapism.
Oh, wow. She would absolutely die of embarrassment if anyone in her waking life found out about these books.
Furthermore, she shares this sagging bed with a very elderly teddy bear named Mr. Wobble.
Mr. Wobble?
Who, due to a tragic childhood sewing error, has 3 eyes instead of the traditional one.
So Glenda's bed is physically sagging under the immense weight of her secret desires, her hidden vulnerabilities, and her desperate need for comfort in a world that demands she be tough all the time.
Exactly.
But let's keep moving down the ladder. Next, we have Juliet, Glenda's staggeringly beautiful, but let's say somewhat intellectually unburdened friend.
Right, Juliet.
Juliet's bed was originally marketed to her mother with the slogan, "Fit for a princess."
It has these gauzy, romantic curtains.
But beneath that marketing veneer, the bed itself is incredibly narrow, poorly constructed, and very cheap.
Yeah, and because her mother passed away, when the cheap bed eventually collapsed under Juliet's weight as a growing girl, there was no one there to fix it properly.
Or buy a new one?
So someone just unceremoniously propped the broken frame up on a stack of empty beer crates.
Beer crates.
And there is a devastating piece of sociological observation here. We are told that we know Juliet's mother is dead, specifically because if she were alive, a mother would have made sure those rough wooden beer crates were at least painted pink.
And decorated with little crowns to match the princess aesthetic of the room.
It's a heartbreaking detail perfectly masked as a dry joke.
It highlights a life defined by unfulfilled marketing promises, systemic poverty, and makeshift duct tape survival tactics.
Juliet sleeps on the literal garbage of the city, empty beer crates, hidden beneath a thin veil of cheap princess gauze.
It perfectly captures the illusion of upward mobility, but the descent doesn't stop there.
It goes lower.
Then you have Trevor Likely, a young man who works deep down in the candle vats. When we examine Trevor's bed, we find out he doesn't actually have one.
His sleeping arrangement is just anywhere.
He might crash on a friend's floor. He might sleep in a hayloft in an unlocked stable.
Which, we are noted, is a much more fragrant and preferable option.
He might squat in an empty, abandoned house.
Mm-hmm.
Or he might just sleep hidden away in a corner at work, provided he doesn't get caught by his boss.
Trevor lives in a state of absolute transience.
He does not possess a single designated square foot of space on this earth to rest his head.
And finally, we reach the absolute bedrock bottom of this hierarchy with Mr. Nutt.
Mr. Nutt.
The dark gray goblin who's currently covering Trevor's shifts in the vats. Mr. Nutt's relationship with beds is the most telling of all. We learn that Mr. Nutt was 7 years old before he even discovered that the act of sleeping, for some people, involved a designated special piece of furniture.
7 years old.
For the first 7 years of his life, a bed wasn't a luxury he couldn't afford. It was a concept that did not exist in his reality.
Okay, hold on, though. I want to push back on this idea just a little bit.
Sure.
I mean, it's a fascinating list of furniture, but is a bed really a defining psychological footprint? Aren't we just looking at the obvious results of income inequality?
That's a fair point.
Are we saying Julia is doomed to a life of superficiality just because she sleeps on beer crates, or that Ridcailey is inherently out of touch just because his bed has a built-in bar? Doesn't this electrology concept strip away their personal agency?
That is a very valid challenge, and it cuts to the core of socioeconomic determinism.
Right.
It isn't that the bed magically dictates their personality. It's that the bed is the physical manifestation of their expected boundaries.
Okay, go on.
Think about how physical space dictates mental space. Ridcailey's 8-poster bed doesn't just provide comfort, it reinforces daily, from the moment he opens his eyes, that the world is designed to yield to his needs.
He expects the environment to mold itself to him.
Exactly. Juliet's bed, on the other hand, trains her to accept a cheap, broken imitation of a fairy tale. It teaches her that structural failure is normal and that you just prop it up with whatever garbage is lying around.
Wow, yeah.
Trevor's transience trains him to expect nothing permanent, forcing him into a survival mindset where he must constantly scan for the next temporary safe harbor.
And
Nutt's early childhood trained him to expect absolute deprivation. When you don't even know comfort is a category of human experience, you don't fight for it.
you don't demand better working conditions or a living wage because your baseline for normalcy is the cold ground.
So while it doesn't erase their agency, it establishes the massive systemic hurdles each of them has to overcome just to conceptualize a different life.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. It immediately establishes the immense stakes of our deep dive. We are looking at an incredibly rigid, stratified class system where the people sleeping at the top and the people sleeping at the bottom might as well be inhabiting entirely different planets.
Their daily realities are entirely alien to one another.
So to truly understand the people occupying these wildly different beds, we have to look at what they actually do when they are awake. How do they spend their time?
Right.
And we are going to start our exploration at the very top in a world referred to as above stairs with the men who sleep in the 8-poster beds. The senior faculty of Unseen University.
The wizards. The intellectual elite.
And our initial introduction to them in action is not a scene of quiet contemplation or rigorous academic debate.
Not at all. It is a scene of utter, baffling chaos.
It's 2 o'clock in the morning. The university is blanketed in this cloying, invisible fluff of ancient silence.
And that silence is violently shattered by a duck hunt taking place in the gloomy stone corridors.
But I need to be incredibly clear here. This is not a normal duck hunt.
No, it is not.
They are hunting a creature they call the megapode. And what is the terrifying megapode? It is actually just another wizard, a man named Rincewind, who has been forced to wear a giant wooden duck headdress.
A giant wooden duck on his head.
And he is frantically running through the halls, making a flat, unconvincing honking noise.
And he's being mercilessly pursued by the entire senior faculty.
But the wizards themselves are not physically running, right?
That would require exertion. Instead, each senior wizard is riding piggyback on the shoulders of a stout, bowler-hatted university porter.
Riding piggyback.
And how are the wizards driving these exhausted porters forward? By dangling a bottle of beer on a piece of string attached to a long stick right in front of the porters' faces.
Like a carrot on a stick for a mule.
Why? Because, as we are told, tradition absolutely demands it.
I mean, just pause and picture that visual for a second. These men are ostensibly the most powerful, highly educated magical minds in the world.
Ostensibly, yes.
And they are spending their time playing Marco Polo at 2 a.m. on the straining backs of the working class, using cheap beer as literal bait.
It's absurd.
And the poor guy who has to somehow manage all of this absolute lunacy is a younger wizard named Ponder Stibbins.
Ponder is the newly appointed master of traditions.
And do you want to know why he is the new master of traditions? Because when he initially went to check in with his predecessor to learn the ropes of the job, he discovered that the previous master of traditions had been dead, sitting at his desk in his office for 200 years.
He was just a pile of dust in a chair.
Which perfectly encapsulates the suffocating institutional stagnation we are dealing with.
It's an institutional echo chamber taken to a magical extreme. We're told that tenure at Unseen University is a commitment for life, and often a long way beyond.
These wizards are completely hermetically sealed off from the realities of the mundane world.
They are theoretically celibate, mostly because they find the concept of women to be incredibly distracting and confusing.
But more importantly, they have zero understanding of normal economic realities or the daily struggles of the people outside their walls.
When Ponder Stibbons attempts to explain to Arch-Chancellor Ridcully why another senior wizard, known as the Dean, has recently left the university, Ridcully's brain simply cannot process the information.
Oh, this specific scene is incredible. It's so revealing. Ridcully is so deeply furious, so utterly baffled that the dean left to take a prestigious job at a different university that he refuses to accept reality.
He's just in denial.
He is literally standing in a room screaming the word traitor at the dean's empty leather chair.
He is yelling at the physical indentations left by the dean's buttocks in the leather upholstery.
It's hilarious, but it shows a profound, almost pathological inability to process change.
Exactly, because in Ridcully's worldview, resigning from Unseen University is an act that simply does not compute.
Right.
In his experience, people leave the university in disgrace, or they leave in a pine box, or occasionally after a magical accident they leave in several small boxes.
But they absolutely do not resign to take another job.
Ridcully is deeply personally offended that the dean allowed his academic worth to be assessed by a governing panel composed of, as Ridcully disdainfully puts it, drapers, greengrocers, and bootmakers.
The working class. The merchants.
Furthermore, Ridcully is utterly horrified when Ponder explains that the dean was lured away by an attractive package of remuneration and a generous pension.
He doesn't even know what that means.
Ridcully looks at Ponder and asks, with genuine bewilderment, since when did a wizard work for wages?
He fundamentally believes that they are a class of pure, untethered academics who simply exist and the universe organically provides whatever they require.
And Ponder Stibbons, bless his heart, tries to use logic to explain how the world actually works.
We are explicitly told that Ponder is a highly logical thinker. And in times of severe stress or confusion, his default mechanism is to fall back on reason and total honesty.
Which, as anyone who has ever worked in a massive bureaucracy knows, is a massive strategic mistake when you are dealing with an angry, entrenched academic.
Ponder tries to gently explain that the reason the wizards don't need wages is because they never actually pay for anything themselves.
When they need something, they just take handfuls of petty cash from a giant jar kept in the office.
They're extracting value from the city's economy without ever realizing they are participating in it.
It's like a modern IT guy trying to explain the complexities of cloud-based cybersecurity to an 80-year-old CEO who still has his secretary print out his emails.
They're speaking two completely different languages.
If we connect this to the broader sociological picture, it raises a vital question about the nature of power.
Are these guys actually capable of handling a genuine external threat?
Right. These wizards possess incredible magical potential, but are they actually powerful in a practical, tested sense? Or have they simply constructed an elaborate, heavily defended system where their abilities never have to be tested against real-world adversity?
When you remove all struggle, you remove growth.
The text notes that modern wizards have become so adept at avoiding inconvenience that they now build their studies into congruent sets of dimensions to save space and walking time.
Oh yeah, Ridcully literally has half a mile of a pristine, flowing trout stream located entirely inside his bathroom just to keep himself out of mischief on rainy afternoons.
They warp the very fabric of reality just to accommodate their hobbies.
So I really have to ask, are these guys actually capable of handling a genuine external threat? Because right now, after their exhausting 2 a.m. duck hunt on the backs of the porters, their single biggest concern, the thing occupying their immense intellects, is waiting for the 3 a.m. snack trolley to arrive.
And we need to talk about the sheer decadence of this trolley.
It features exactly 107 distinct types of cheese.
Plus, it carries over 70 varieties of pickles and chutneys.
This is their absolute priority. This is what the pinnacle of magical academia looks like.
It is the ultimate manifestation of resource monopolization. But here is the critical pivot.
Okay.
The only possible way a society can afford to have its greatest, most highly educated minds hunting wooden ducks at 2 a.m. and debating the merits of 100 kinds of cheese at 3 a.m. is if there's a massive, invisible army of people working tirelessly in the dark.
Performing back-breaking labor to keep the lights on, the fires burning, and the food flowing.
Absolute comfort requires absolute labor. If Ridcully is entirely insulated from cold floors and hunger, it means someone else is standing in front of a furnace and scrubbing pots.
And that stark reality brings us to the second distinct world in our deep dive. We must leave the airy, dimensionally expanded towers and travel deep underground, below stairs.
Down into the sprawling basement levels of the university.
The atmosphere down here is entirely different. It is beautifully, intensely warm, but it's also incredibly humid and deafeningly noisy because of the labyrinth of ad hoc hissing central heating pipes that snake across the ceilings.
This is the industrial heart of the institution.
And here, in the suffocating heat of the candle vats, we meet a man named Smeems. Smeems holds the title of Candle Knave, and Smeems genuinely believes, with every fiber of his being, that he has the single most important job in the entire university.
And if we look at it from a purely practical, logistical standpoint, Smeems isn't entirely correct.
How so?
Unseen University is a massive, ancient stone fortress. It does not have many windows. If Smeems and his crew failed to continuously fill the thousands of candlesticks, sconces, and chandeliers, the greatest magical minds in the world would be sitting in total, impenetrable darkness within 24 hours.
They wouldn't be able to read their spell books. They wouldn't be able to find the cheese trolley.
Smeems is the literal bringer of light, and he takes this responsibility incredibly, almost religiously, seriously.
Specifically, he is the designated keeper of the Emperor Candle.
Oh, the Emperor Candle.
This is one of the most fascinating logistical details in this entire world. It's not just a large candle, it is a mega candle, a towering mountain of silvery gray tallow.
It's not poured, it is aggregated.
Right. It is built from the melted stubs and drippings of thousands upon thousands of other candles over the course of 2,000 years. It is currently 38 feet tall.
1,000 years ago, the candle grew so tall that they actually had to knock a massive hole in the stone ceiling above it just to allow it to keep growing upward into the next floor.
For Smeems to do his job, he has to climb a terrifying, rickety wooden folding stepladder, and when that runs out, he has to climb steps that have been physically carved into the wax of the candle itself just to reach the flame at the summit.
Smeems views this massive pillar of wax as the ultimate beacon of tradition. It is a physical manifestation of the sunk cost fallacy.
They keep it burning simply because it has always been burning.
Smeems proudly notes that the Emperor Candle has only failed to burn 3 times in his entire tenure, which he considers a massive, heroic achievement of logistics.
But what is truly revealing about this section isn't the candle itself. It is the introduction of the person currently assisting Smeems. We meet Mr. Nutt, Smeems' temporary apprentice.
Right, because Trevor Likely, the young man who sleeps anywhere he can find a spot, is currently supposedly ill, so Nutt has stepped in to cover his shifts in the vats.
Now, as we mentioned earlier, Nutt is a goblin, and his demeanor, his capability, is entirely jarringly different from the bumbling, chaotic, insulated wizards above stairs.
To illustrate this, let's look at a specific crisis.
Remember the wizard's piggyback duck hunt? Well, that chaotic stampede accidentally crashes through the upper floor and completely crushes Smeems' wooden stepladder, while Smeems is stranded near the top of the 38-foot Emperor Candle.
Smeems is trapped. So what does Nutt do? Does he panic? Does he form a committee? Does he wait for an arch-chancellor to cast a spell?
No. Nutt demonstrates absolute, quiet, mechanical competence.
Without waiting for a single order from his superior, Nutt calmly opens a tool bag. He takes 3 long wooden snuffer poles and screws them together end to end.
He seamlessly attaches a heavy metal chandelier hook to the top of the combined pole, loops a sturdy rope over the hook, and essentially engineers a makeshift, highly functional pulley system on the fly to get Smeems down safely.
Oh, and during this entire operation, Nutt also realizes something catastrophic. The commotion actually did cause the flame of the Emperor Candle to go out.
But instead of pointing this out and embarrassing Smeems, Nutt discreetly, almost invisibly, provides Smeems with a box of matches so that Smeems can quickly relight the ancient candle without losing face in front of a subordinate.
And how does Smeems react to this incredible display of engineering, competence, and intense emotional intelligence?
He is completely off balance and defensive. He actually tries to scold Nutt for possessing matches.
Smeems claims that tradition dictates all candles must be lit from a specifically burning taper, not a modern match.
Nutt, ever the diplomat, politely diffuses the anger by claiming the matches must have fallen out of Smeems' own pocket, completely protecting the older man's fragile ego.
Nutt is hyper-polite. He is impeccably spoken, using advanced vocabulary. He is meticulously scrubbed clean.
But Smeems simply cannot handle the cognitive dissonance. He looks at Nutt's undeniable competence, and then his internal prejudice overrides his eyes. Smeems thinks to himself, bright as a button, grubby as a turd.
He literally cannot see past Nutt's race. Even as Nutt is saving him, Smeems reduces her to dirt.
And this brings us face to face with the intense systemic prejudice that Nutt navigates every single second of his life. He is a goblin.
And within the lore of this world, goblins are universally hated. They are deeply associated with a massive historical conflict known as the Dark War in Far Uberwald.
Now, we need to understand the mechanics of historical scapegoating here. Uberwald represents the classic other, the terrifying, untamed region outside the civilized borders.
Goblins, as a race, are considered cowardly, throat-cutting thieves. But this isn't an inherent biological truth. It is the lingering propaganda of the victors of that war.
Societies returning from conflict often need a bogeyman to unify against, and goblins fill that role perfectly in Ankh-Morpork.
Nutt is carrying the weight of a war he didn't start. He vividly remembers being a small child and having adult villagers shout hateful words at him, followed by throwing heavy stones that smashed the little structures he tried to build in the dirt.
It is so incredibly painful to think about. A child having his creations stoned because of his species.
Because of this trauma, Nutt's entire survival strategy, his core psychological coping mechanism, is extreme, unyielding politeness and a desperate drive to make himself indispensable to the people who hate him.
He constantly repeats a mantra to himself. Smile at people. Like them. Be helpful. Accumulate worth.
He tries to be invisible by being perfectly useful.
There's this one heartbreaking moment where Smeems is lecturing Nutt, claiming that the wizards upstairs possess the finest mathematical minds in the world, capable of instantly calculating something incredibly difficult, like 864 times 316.
And as Smeems says this, Nutt instantly, without hesitation, mutters 273,024 under his breath. He knows the exact answer instantly.
But he hides it. He swallows his own genius.
He absolutely has to hide it. If we look at the coping mechanisms of marginalized groups, this is a textbook example.
Nutt masks his massive intellect behind a veneer of subservient manual labor just to avoid being physically beaten or stoned.
He knows that if he disrupts the social order by proving he is smarter than his oppressors, he will become a target.
Meanwhile, if we look across the basement to Glenda, who runs the night kitchen, we see a completely different coping mechanism for dealing with a lack of societal power.
She doesn't hide. She exerts absolute iron-fisted control over her immediate environment.
Glenda's kitchen is her sovereign territory. It is her fortress. She scrubs heavy iron frying pans until she can literally see her face reflected in the metal.
She manages a whole highly organized team of women. You have Mrs. Hedges coordinating the massive cheese boards. You have Mildred and Rachel systematically breaking down the vegetables.
Glenda is a general commanding an army of culinary logistics. But beyond the food, her primary focus is aggressively mothering and protecting Juliet.
And we must examine why Juliet requires such intense mothering. Juliet is described as breathtakingly beautiful.
The prose suggests she is a literal distillation of beauty that uncoils into the ether around her.
When she simply walks past the theoretically celibate wizards, she causes chaos. Their ancient hearts beat dangerously fast, they experience completely unfamiliar, confusing longings, and they feel a sudden, terrifying urge to write bad poetry.
She wields immense physical power, but intellectually, Juliet is profoundly vacant. She frequently mistakes questions for answers. She continually dates terrible, abusive men.
Glenda engages in what we might call maternal gatekeeping. She is constantly protecting Juliet from the world and protecting the world from Juliet to the point of washing the kitchen dishes again herself after Juliet gives them what Glenda calls a light baptism of water.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. I want to draw a parallel here.
Go for it.
When I look at Nutt, I compare his situation to a highly advanced, sentient artificial intelligence that has been forcefully installed into the chassis of a basic four-function plastic desk calculator, and it is forced to do simple addition just to avoid being unplugged by frightened humans.
Wow.
He has this massive, sprawling processing power. He casually uses literary terms like leitmotif in casual conversation and calculates six-digit numbers instantly. But he physically forces himself to just dribble hot wax onto Campbell stubs because if he shows his true capacity, the system will attack him.
That is a highly effective analogy. He is actively masking his true potential to survive in a world that has already violently decided what his ceiling is.
So let's look at the grand architecture we've explored so far.
We have these two perfectly isolated, totally distinct ecosystems operating in the same building.
Above stairs, the wizards are lost in absolute luxury, bizarre traditions, dimensional trout streams, and theoretical magic, completely shielded from any real-world consequences.
Below stairs, Glenda, Nutt, Smeems, and Trevor are dealing with the gritty, exhausting reality of daily survival, physical labor, heat, and deeply ingrained prejudice.
And structurally, these two worlds are designed to never, ever interact meaningfully.
Never interact. Until, that is, Ponder Stibbons decides to turn a specific page in his dusty rulebook.
Which brings us to the moment everything changes, the catalyst.
Precisely. We move from the established sociological normal into the disruption.
So Ponder Stibbons, bless his highly organized bureaucratic heart, is meticulously reading through the ancient leather-bound book of traditions to ensure the university is compliant.
And buried deep in the legalese, he discovers a horrifying caveat attached to something called Arch-Chancellor Preserved Bigger's Bequest.
Now, to understand the panic this causes, we need to talk about the brutal economics of academia in this world. Ponder calls an emergency meeting and explains the math to Ridcully and the senior faculty.
The estates and lands left behind by Arch-Chancellor Bigger centuries ago fund the university.
Specifically, the income generated from this trust covers, and Ponder, being Ponder, has calculated the exact, terrifying percentage, 87.4% of the university's entire food budget.
87.4%. That is practically the whole pie.
And what is the bizarre, seemingly arbitrary condition attached to this massive pile of money? Ponder reads the text of the will aloud. And this shall follow as long as the university shall enter a team in the game of foot the ball or poor boys fun.
They have to play a game of street football every 20 years.
If they fail to field a team and play the game, the legal contract stipulates that the entire massive financial bequest instantly reverts to the surviving mundane relatives of Arch-Chancellor Bigger.
And as Ponder notes with rising panic, it has been roughly 20 years since the university last fielded a team. The deadline is looming.
The wizards' immediate knee-jerk reaction is absolute denial. They declare it impossible.
They argue that football is not a gentleman's pursuit. It is a chaotic, muddy brawl meant for bullies, louts, and street roughs.
Furthermore, they point out that the game has actually been legally banned by the city's ruler, the terrifying Lord Vetinari.
But Ponder, ever the pragmatist, points out that Unseen University operates under magical jurisdiction and isn't subject to mundane city law. The law isn't the real threat.
The real threat is the loss of the food. Ponder looks at the assembled, well-fed wizards and delivers the killing blow.
He tells them that if they lose the bigger bequest, he has calculated a new, highly austere dietary regime.
They will be reduced to 3 nourishing but basic meals a day, relying heavily on a healthy diet of whole grains and fresh vegetables.
And the ultimate tragedy. The legendary 3 a.m. cheese board will be drastically reduced to a choice of merely 3 types of cheese.
The reaction to this dietary threat is magnificent in its absurdity.
The wizard, known as the Senior Wrangler, cries out in genuine anguish, 3 cheeses isn't a choice, it's a penance.
And upon hearing this, Arch-Chancellor Ridcully, the man who yells at chairs and demands a built-in mahogany privy, immediately, without a single second of further hesitation, decides that the elite university will absolutely play this hyper-violent, muddy street game.
It perfectly, hilariously highlights how luxurious food and absolute physical comfort are the absolute, undeniable driving forces of this elite ruling class.
They will compromise their dignity, their safety, and their academic standing to protect their cheese.
I have to laugh at the sheer, desperate absurdity of it. Ridcully is a master of retroactive justification.
Having decided they must play to save the food, he instantly pivots to justifying it academically.
He suddenly claims that magic users actually need the mindset of an athlete.
He argues that a true wizard needs the grit of someone who is willing to slide face first down a cobblestone street on their teeth just to secure a guaranteed double first degree. He claims it builds essential character.
I want to pose a question to you, the listener, thinking about your own life. How many massive, disruptive corporate or institutional decisions are made in your world, dressed up as synergy or character building, purely so the executives at the top don't have to give up their specific, lavish perks?
These wizards will literally throw their entire academic institution into a violent, bloody street brawl just to save the 107 cheeses.
It is institutional self-preservation operating at its most base primal level. But within this comedic pivot, we also get a vital, chilling glimpse into Ridcully's true nature.
He isn't just a soft, insulated academic who only knows how to eat.
When discussing the physical nature of the game, he proudly brings up his own grandfather, a man named Dave Likely.
Dave, we are told, was a massive prize fighter who once famously scored 4 goals in a single football match.
He made his living knocking people unconscious for money. He was known to frequently throw people bodily out of ground floor windows.
But, as Ridcully very carefully clarifies, his grandfather was universally considered a very gentle man by the neighborhood.
And why is this brutal enforcer considered gentle?
Because he always possessed the polite foresight to actually open the window first before throwing the person through the glass.
And, Ridcully notes proudly, Dave never tore off any human appendage that couldn't be relatively easily stitched back on by a competent doctor.
It's a darkly hilarious detail, but it serves a crucial narrative purpose. It reveals that Ridcully has deep roots in working-class brutality.
He has pragmatism and violence in his lineage. He is perfectly, terrifyingly willing to embrace physical violence if it serves his ultimate ends, which, in this case, is maintaining his lifestyle.
He looks at his panicked, soft faculty and assures them that they are not just going to show up and forfeit to keep the money. They are going to actually win this brutal game.
So now that the insulated wizards are fully legally committed to playing football, we have to look at the reality of the game itself. What exactly have they signed up for?
And to understand the reality of the game, we have to leave the high towers, leave the deep basements, and step out into the muddy, unforgiving cobblestones. Which brings us crashing into the final arena of our deep dive, the streets.
We explore the actual lived reality of football through the eyes of the working class, specifically through Trevor Likely and Juliet.
And the rules of the street game, as they understand it, are staggeringly brutal.
It bears very little resemblance to modern refereed sports.
As Juliet casually, almost tearfully explains it, a match is played until one of 3 conditions is met. You play until full time is called, until the first dead man is dragged off the pitch, or until the first score is made.
The violence isn't a byproduct of the game, it is the game.
Juliet mentions to Glenda that she recently went to watch a match with a local guy known as Rotten Johnny, a suitor whom Glenda absolutely despises primarily because he permanently smells like stale cat pee.
Juliet says they actually had to leave the match early.
When Glenda asks her who ended up winning, Juliet shrugs and says she honestly doesn't know because when they decided to leave, the outcome of the game was currently being decided entirely based on an active tally of head wounds.
This raises an important question to analyze regarding the role of sports for the marginalized working class in a city like Ankh-Morpork. Why would people subject themselves to this?
For characters like Trev and Juliet, local football is absolutely everything. It is their entire cultural ecosystem.
In the kitchen, Juliet argues with intense, fiery passion with Trev about the supremacy of the local neighborhood teams, the Dimwell team versus the Lobbins.
She viciously insults Dimwell, claiming their star player, Beasley, is so incompetent he couldn't carry the ball in a sealed sack.
Trev fiercely fires back that the Lobbins are a pathetic bunch of frail grannies.
And how does Juliet choose to defend the honor and toughness of the Lobbins? She proudly shouts, "Staple Upright was let out of the tanty the day before. See if you dimmers like him stamping all over you."
For context, the tanty is the local slang for the city's maximum security prison.
They are actively relying on freshly released, violent convicts to anchor their sports teams and win their neighborhood games.
But look closely at what this intense tribalism actually provides for them. We have established that these are people who own almost nothing.
Juliet sleeps on discarded beer crates. Trevor sleeps on hay in unlocked stables.
In a world that denies them property, wealth, or structural power, football provides a fierce, undeniable identity. It provides deep tribal belonging.
It provides a source of local pride that the elites cannot tax or take away.
Glenda, who is more pragmatic, notes while riding the crowded horse bus that she personally hates the violence of the games, but she acknowledges that it's physically genuinely dangerous not to proudly display the right team colors when you're walking on your home turf.
The sport is a localized survival mechanism. You absolutely have to fit into the tribe to survive the streets.
And speaking of survival and skills, we need to talk about Trevor's relationship with the physical act of playing the game.
Trevor possesses actual borderline magical skills with a simple tin can.
While he's down in the suffocating heat of the vats, talking with Nutt, he pulls an empty, battered tin can out of his pocket.
He drops it toward the floor, but before it hits, he catches it on the toe of his boot. He flicks it high into the air, imparts a vicious spin to it, and kicks it with terrifying force across the massive, cavernous room.
And then, defying all known laws of physics, The tin can stops dead in midair near the far stone wall.
It spins rapidly in place, buzzing like an angry hornet, and then it comes flying back across the room to Trevor, moving even faster than when he kicked it.
Nutt, who is a genius of calculation, is absolutely mesmerized by the impossibility of the physics.
But Trev just catches the can effortlessly. When Nutt asks how he does it, Trev just shrugs and says he never actually thought about the mechanics of it. He just constantly wonders why everyone else can't do it.
It is a perfect depiction of flow state and physical hypercompetence.
Trevor is a natural, once-in-a-generation prodigy at a game he technically doesn't even play officially on a roster team yet.
He embodies the raw, unrefined genius of the working class that the academics above completely ignore.
But while Trevor is casually bending the laws of physics with garbage in the basement back upstairs, a different kind of calculation is happening.
Ponder Stibbons, our exhausted IT guy of magic, is trying to figure out exactly who Mr. Nutt is.
As part of his many duties, Ponder manages the university wages, and he noticed that Nutt just suddenly showed up one night, presenting a chit demanding only the absolute minimum wage.
Ponder, finding this suspicious, asks Arch-Chancellor Ridcully about the goblin's origins.
And Ridcully, in his typical blunt fashion, drops an absolute paradigm-shifting bombshell. He looks at Ponder and says completely seriously, the problem with Mr. Nutt is that people want to kill him.
Ponder, naturally alarmed, asks what people.
And Ridcully just casually shrugs his massive shoulders and replies, probably everybody.
It is a deeply chilling, revealing moment. We have to ask.
Yeah.
Why is the notoriously selfish, comfort-obsessed Arch-Chancellor of the most powerful magical university in the world taking the immense personal risk of secretly protecting a goblin in the basement?
What does Ridcully know that Seams doesn't?
We know Nutt is carrying immense trauma. We know he has traumatic flashbacks of a man named Pastor Oates bringing aggressive forgiveness to his village, a forgiveness that was clearly violently rejected by the wider world.
We know Nutt speaks with absolute flawless grammatical precision. Your leitmotif, Mr. Trev, and we know he takes agonizing, calculated care never to frighten a single human being, to the point of experiencing near panic when Glenda merely questions if he might be a zombie.
Nutt is a coiled spring of potential, trapped in a basement, protected by an elite who sees him as useful.
Wait, I struggle with this AI analogy we used earlier in light of this new information. If Nutt is this staggering genius who can calculate 6-digit numbers instantly and engineer complex pulley systems on the fly, why doesn't he just leave?
Why stay in a humid, oppressive basement where he's verbally abused by a guy who casually calls him a turd?
What's the psychological trap keeping him locked in Smeem's vats?
It's the devastating, paralyzing efficiency of generational propaganda. Nutt isn't physically chained to the vats. He is psychologically chained by the belief that if he steps out of his carefully constructed subservient role, the entire world will instantly revert to throwing stones.
Ridcully offers him the one thing a genius goblin cannot find anywhere else in the city, a shadow to hide in where the stones can't reach him.
It is the ultimate paradox of the elite, using the marginalized. They offer safety, but only in exchange for absolute invisibility and cheap labor.
So what does this all mean? Let's take a massive step back and look at the incredibly volatile board we've just meticulously set up over the last hour.
On one side, we have an elite, incredibly soft, profoundly insulated magical faculty who are now legally, contractually forced to step outside their congruent dimensions and play lethal street game just to save their daily 107 cheeses.
On the other side, we have a violently physical, borderline lethal street game played by a working class who use it as their sole source of pride and identity.
In the middle, we have a street kid in Trevor who possesses impossible physics-defying football skills but sleeps on hay.
And hiding beneath it all, we have a genius goblin who calculates faster than a modern computer, carries the weight of a horrific racial war, and is being secretly guarded by the Arch-Chancellor himself.
The chessboard is indeed perfectly, dangerously set. It is an epic, unavoidable culture clash waiting to explode into violence.
You have the immovable, entitled object of Unseen University's ancient traditions accelerating directly toward the unstoppable, bloody force of Ankh-Morpork's hyper-tribal street culture.
The architecture of this society is about to be stress-tested in the mud.
What an absolute, incredible tapestry we've unrolled today. Just take a moment to think about the massive journey we took through this world.
We started by exploring the deep psychological profiling of lectrology, analyzing how a built-in mahogany privy creates a tyrant of comfort, while sleeping on cheap beer crates forces a life of makeshift survival.
We marveled at the sheer logistical insanity of the 38-foot Emperor candle built from 2,000 years of stubborn tradition and hot wax.
We expose the absurd, hilarious realities of university funding, where a staggering 87% of an ancient institution's budget is dedicated entirely to pleasing the stomachs of men who yell at furniture.
And we saw how one single, long-forgotten legal rule penned by a dead man can force the highest, most untouchable echelons of society to step out of their ivory towers and into the muddy, bloody, head-wound-inducing streets of the working class.
And as we bring this deep dive to a close, I want to leave you, the listener, with one final provocative thought to mull over as you go about the rest of your day.
We've talked a lot about the rules governing these characters.
Tradition, in its most restrictive sense, is often accurately described as peer pressure from dead people. Arch-Chancellor Preserved Bigger has been nothing but a pile of dry dust for centuries.
Yet his whimsical, eccentric love for a violent street game, a game he likely only ever watched safely from a high, fortified balcony, is about to dictate the physical safety and the immediate future of the most powerful living wizards in the world.
I urge you to turn that lens on your own life. Look closely at your workplace, look at your neighborhood, look at your daily routines.
How many of the rigid, stressful rules you bend over backward to follow every single day were written by someone who is long dead, someone who wouldn't even recognize the modern world you're trying to survive in today?
Are you protecting an emperor candle that went out a long time ago?
Wow. Peer pressure from dead people. That is a concept that is going to stick with me for a very long time. Are we just protecting burnt-out candles? Thank you so much for joining us on this extensive deep dive today.
I hope you keep questioning the ancient rule books in your own life.
And hey, if you ever find yourself working the graveyard shift in a creepy, silent art museum and the antique shelves suddenly explode into a million pieces, just remember Rudolph scattering.
If you see a gloriously glittering lady holding a glowing ball, maybe just nod politely, smile back, and go find a job at a pet shop.
Even if the kittens are a little judgy, it's safer than the basement. Catch you next time.